Hello, everyone. Welcome to Caster Calls ZombieGrub episode 5. We're here with Paperthin, a CSGO. Sorry, I've been saying CSGO a lot. PUBG caster.
I wish.
You're all excited. Sorry, a PUBG caster from Korea. You also do a couple other esports as well. Basically, that freelance lifestyle, but over in Korea. But I actually met you years ago at this point through Tasteless, mutual friend, right? And I knew
Yep.
you back when you were starting just as a teacher, and when you were like had the esports dream.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, and it sounds like there's a long journey to tell here. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for actually taking the time out of your day to do this. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. You and I met a long time. It's weird to think it's been this long already. But yeah, this is really cool that you're doing this. I really like this project that you're working on here. And thanks again for having me. I'm really excited to do this.
Cool, thank you. Everyone else is just like, yeah, no worries, no problem. But you're like, yeah. I'm excited.
I like these kind of things. I don't know. I look forward to this all day. I'm like, yeah, I get to talk about casting. Like, this is like what I do, like with my friends at, like, when we sit around at like a cafe or a bar or something. Like, we're just sitting there talking theory about casting and our craft, and so it's like exciting to like do this.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly why I wanted to do it. Like I kind of had the idea more than a couple months ago, and then went to some events, and just it would happen. And I get into a really interesting conversation with one of the co-casters, and I'd be like, well, this is stuff I want to talk about, like really in depth. So I also wanted to get basically everyone's point of view from all walks of esports, very different styles of casting when it comes to changing between RTS to MOBA to shooters, different types of shooters as well. So I'm coming at you a little more of the novice, like with the other guys with StarCraft. I can at least, there's a lot of things I can reference and just be like, yeah, exactly, I know that exact feeling. But you may actually be coming from a place I'm just gonna be like, oh shoot, I've never really thought of that. I've played PUBG and I've played some shooters, as anyone has, but there's a lot of things I just don't know. So I know you've covered some of these things with Tasteless over on his podcast as well, but I am actually still wanting to share with the this podcast, I guess, these listeners here. How did you actually get from being just a guy in Korea to getting to be on the a world stage for PUBG?
Sure. So to give a little bit of history, I've always been into esports. I was a competitive Halo player for a long time back in the mid to late 2000s. Halo 3 specifically. Went to some MLGs and that kind of thing. Just like competing. Kind of dabbled in a few other games here and there. But mostly was just kind of watching and doing these things. I was working IT in America for a long time. And when I turned about 30, I kind of had my midlife crisis, I guess, at that point. Like, you could call it that. Your third life crisis, like whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't happy in America. And there's a lot I didn't like about living there and working there and various things. And so I just sold everything I basically had except for some clothes and like a computer, and that's about it. And then I moved to Korea. So I already knew Tasteless, actually. We have a mutual friend. That's how we actually met each other. His friend from high school is my friend in college. We were actually both in this guy's wedding, so that's that's how close we are to each other. So he kind of encouraged me to come out here. I had actually taken a vacation out here a couple times to see him, as well as some other people out here. I kind of would split my time between Japan and Korea. And then I kind of talked to Nick and a few of our other friends here, and they hooked me up with a teaching job out here, which is pretty good. They're really not that bad. I mean, if you can find a good school, they're pretty easy to do. And so I did that for a little while. And on the side, I was kind of always interested in esports, of course. And I wanted to get involved in esports. And early on, I told Nick, I said I wanted to be an ambassador for esports because I really love esports, all esports, not just shooters or anything. Like, I like MOBAs. I like League of Legends. I like StarCraft a lot. I've been watching StarCraft since the Golden TV days. Back MSLs, OSLs, all these things. So that's kind of what I told Nick, and he's like, "Well, I don't know, man." He's like, "You should just kind of figure out a specific role that you want to do." And I was thinking about it, and I was playing a ton of PUBG when it came out. It's an absolute ton. And I was also sort of doing odd jobs for AfreecaTV on the side, just kind of things here and there. And so they kind of knew me and knew who I was. And I was down at the studio sometimes, either just to watch or just hang out with Nick and Dan and stuff. And they knew I was playing a ton of PUBG, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to start a PUBG league. You know, would you be interested?" It kind of through the grapevine, and I was like, "Huh." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." So I put together like a demo reel for them. I do have a lot of experience in public speaking. In high school, I did competitive public speaking. So for me, speaking was no problem. That's always something that's come pretty naturally to me. And so I went, they liked the audition tape. They put me with Rapid, and he and I went at it about 2 years ago now, just over 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is a lot of things as I dissect. So, I mean, I know a bit about Korea and Korean culture and the Korean esports as well. So, from my understanding, right, is that happens like a decent amount. It was happening back in StarCraft back in the day, but Tasteless and Artosis kind of like really latched on. But the idea that a guy who spoke English, usually a guy that spoke English, could actually go to Korea and kind of just like if he met enough people, he could actually just they'd be like, "You speak English? Okay, great. Like, do you do you look good on the camera? Okay, great. Like, come over here and try and cast this thing." When it was Clash Royale or World of Tanks, that was a thing at one point. That would happen, and it kind of sounds like that happened a little bit here. But you actually mentioned that you had to make a demo reel, so I don't know. It sounds like the bar has been
Sure.
heightened since I guess the day when it was really just like, "Hey, please come cast the stuff because we don't have enough English people out here."
Yeah. Well, these days, there's a fair amount of us who've kind of made this our lives here,
Hmm.
whether it be, Tasteless and Artosis doing StarCraft. You guys got guys like Atlas and Valdez doing League of
Mm.
Legends. Whatever's going on, there's dedicated casters. So the bar has been set pretty high. And I mean, especially with, of course, Tasteless and Artosis, I mean, the iconic duo, they set the bar really, really high. And then, I mean, Atlas, and Valdez, Last Shadow, those guys doing the LCK are incredible. So, like, we have some of the best, I think, esports broadcaster talent in the world here. So now, yeah, the bar is going up, and we all push each other as well. Like, we're constantly talking to each other about all these things, trying to get better and encouraging each other. And I mean,
Hmm.
I have to say, like, Nick's been invaluable. I mean, he has taught me so much, and he's so good at his feedback. Like, he doesn't say things to you in a way that makes you feel stupid or like you're doing something really wrong or really bad. He's just good at like explaining what you're doing that's could be improved upon, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's very interesting. We don't have a lot of mentors, I think, mentors. As I don't know, like in esports in general, I know there's more initiatives. You'll see people retweeting about become Australia's next big casters happening like now, and I know Red Eye retweets things. I think of his agency, maybe I don't remember, but like you can kind of
Mm,
compete to get a master session. I think with him is what they call or something like that. Like it's getting more popular. And Red Eye obviously also made a book and is doing an audiobook about esports broadcasting, which is really cool. But it's still not really something that you're going to be able to go online, search how to cast esports, and then really find credible
mm.
sources. I'm sure if you Googled it, you'd actually find a couple of really dumb, shitty things. But as far as credible, like I think that's actually kind of rare. And of course, Tasteless would be the most rare. I mean, if Tasteless was a coach on one of these online platforms, I don't his rate would be outrageous. So can you like is there anything that I'm gonna be jet like really selfish here and just say like, can you
Mm.
tell me what type of things Tasteless is like? Do you guys go over VODs? Is it just more of like a hey, I was watching and you did this thing or what?
Yeah, it's usually it's a hey, I was watching.
Hmm.
We tune in each other's stuff all the time, and you know, I'll give him a little bit of feedback here and there too. But he's, you know, he's very, you know, he and I are very, very close. So, and not only in physical proximity, but also just in terms of being friends. Uh, and so he's very honest with me. I would say the best thing he ever told me was don't get caught up in all the drama bullshit and all this other stuff in the background. He's like, focus on your craft, be the best caster you can. That will push you further than anything else. Just focus on being better. Focus on what the companies want. That's a big thing that a lot of
Mm.
people don't think about. They think about themselves. They're like, well, how can I be a better caster? Well, that's part of it, but you also got to think about what the company you're working for wants in their broadcast. Are they looking for really analytical type casting, right? Somebody who's really good at breaking down what's happening because that's what their viewer base wants. Do they want hype broadcasting because they want clips to use in the future where they can have this big moment where it's like, oh, and you're yelling in the, you know, in the microphone and that kind of thing. So there's a couple different aspects you got to kind of put together, but focus on your craft first and foremost was probably the best thing he ever told me.
I mean, it's a good general suggestion for sure. But that's, you know, the thing about working with the companies is also a good point that I think Fear Dragon has brought up, another StarCraft 2 caster. Um, Actually, you would have met him because we all hang out. But
Yeah, I've met him a couple times. Yeah,
yeah, um,
he's a good dude.
yeah. But he, you know, he talks about, like, you know, oftentimes the feedback that we get from the general public is missing a few things. But one of those things is like, hey, there's sometimes just things that like the company wants or the producer wants, that you're not gonna see, right? So that's a very good point. But Korea has a very different structure, just like literally Korea, right? Not even just esports, but Korea's business structure is quite a bit different, and you are working with Korean companies, right?
Yeah. So mostly I work with PUBG these days, which is a Korean-based company.
Mm-hmm.
So it works out pretty nicely that, you know, I lived here and they're based out of here. There are some oddities to it. There are some kind of general things that they want that maybe other businesses or casters don't want you to do or something like that. Like, I mean, especially here in Korea, they love hype. Like, you've listened to
Mm.
these Korean casters, right? They lose their marbles during all these games, and that's what they want from you. And so I've kind of adapted to that style. I mean, I realized. So I went to the first big global PUBG event I did was almost exactly 1 year ago now, in London. It was called the Face It Global Summit, and they there I got there and I was a little nervous. It was the first time I was like actually nervous to be doing an event because it was so
Mm-hmm.
big and it was so life changing for me. And so the first day they paired me up with this guy we'd never worked together. His name's Matram, just an excellent guy, excellent broadcaster. Love working with him. He and I have been paired up ever since for international PUBG. And I got there and I was so nervous. And the second or third day, somebody's gonna like. I think it was the third day. Um, this Chinese player did something absolutely crazy that just was the craziest thing we'd ever seen in competitive PUBG. He blew up an entire squad with one grenade, basically,
Oh, cool.
and like snaked it out to the end and ended up winning the game. Like, he did something that was just so unreal. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. And Matt and I just were lucky enough to be the ones casting that moment. And now it's like the most viewed PUBG esports clip ever. But I just lost my mind. I got so engrossed in the moment. I completely just, I don't remember doing it. I don't remember doing it. It just like something just took over. And we got done and Matt and I are like shaking as we're taking our you know, headsets off. We're just looking at each other like, did that just happen? Like, no way. And what I realized from that clip was I was hype as shit, and they loved that, and the company loved it. And from then on, like, I focused a lot on, I moved towards kind of being more of a hype guy than anything. Like, to be honest, like, that's a really tough skill to get, and there's a lot involved in being good at that people probably don't think is. They probably think it's easier than it is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that. So did you come into PUBG or esports in general thinking that you should be more of an analyst just because like you kind of have to prove
Yes.
your knowledge? Okay. That's what I figured
Yeah,
because that's what a
definitely.
lot of things are, but I was unsure if like shooters might be different. But yeah, it sounds the same. So,
Well, especially for PUBG, it's a
mm,
really complicated esport, actually. That's why I kind of love it. It isn't just like, this isn't to shit on CSGO or anything like that. CSGO is a great game. I love the game. I love to watch it. But it's pretty simple, right? The maps are pretty well known. The guns are pretty well identified what they do. But PUBG is a whole different beast because there's 16 teams playing at once. So
Mm,
anyway.
yeah, bit more of like the Wild West. I think things can get crazy and different in a way that CSGO is very streamlined for sure. There's been so
Yeah.
many CSGO games. But yeah, so the play-by-play thing, like I think that's what everyone comes in. I think there's an understandable fear of a lot of beginner casters, not because of like necessarily they acknowledge that it's hard, but just the equipment limitations that are available. Like until you learn how to use a compressor, until you have like a tech team behind your mic to go into the really like hype moments when you're on like a Yeti mic is not going to sound very good. So I actually
Right.
like that was my fear, as well as for me personally, I didn't want to have the really high pitched sound that like a woman could get to a little bit
Mm,
easier than a guy. So I was very nervous about doing play
mm.
by play, just like from the get go, and not even mentioning the amount of actual craft that goes into play by play. But that's something that I've worked on, and it sounds like something like you you realize is also really difficult. What would you say is like? Could you explain why you think that play by play is so difficult? Because I have my own way of explaining it, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Mm. For me, what's hard about it, and I still tend to fall more into the analyst role more often than not, but I've been doing more and more play by play as time goes on. Using different words, different verbiage, just having a thesaurus in your head, right, to kind of like not repeat yourself a lot and sound like the same thing. Keeping your sentences flowing naturally while not messing them up is really challenging sometimes. Like I still stumble over myself where I'm just like, oh, this sentence, how am I going to recover from it? I started it halfway through and then I have a completely different idea. And I got to like make these words match up somehow. Oh, fuck. I don't know. But so for me, it's like I have to think a lot more like while I'm doing it. It's weird because analysis, you just kind of know it if you're good. Like if you've done it enough and you just kind of know the game, you just kind of know it. Like you can just say it and people are like, yep. And you kind of know what to do. But yeah, play by play, I find to be much more challenging, and the guys who are really good at it, I respect the hell out of.
Yeah, I think that really hits on what I was going to say is that, like, as you said, like, you don't want to stumble over your words. Saying the same thing over and over is also definitely something you need to work on. But for analysts, like, you literally, depending on the game, I suppose, there's different, um, pacing. But most of the time, analysts are going to have more time to think, basically, like the play by play guy is going to have all the moments that need to be talked about at that moment, either you're on or you're not, where the analyst can kind of wait out those moments. If they take the silence, that can be, very important in a broadcast. But if they take that silence, it's like not as big of a deal as if the hype guy would imagine if the hype guy takes a second to think when a widow mine goes off or something in StarCraft, right? And it's just like, oh, there was a delay there. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
You can't.
Yeah.
It would feel so awkward and feel like he's like casting like on a delay,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Exactly. So the analyst guy can like very calmly just be like, yeah, actually, here's what happened. Because that was the first thing I was like, oh my God, like, how do I do this? I would just, first time calling play by play, like really trying to just be play by play, I would just call everything wrong. Despite being, a usually like fairly smart broadcaster, about StarCraft, I would cast a fight and I'd be like, oh, well, duh. Like, of course that went that way. Now that I have hindsight, like I realized that was what's going to happen. And I found that was the biggest thing I found difficult. And that's what like the really the thing I respect is when play-by-play broadcasters don't just get a fight right, because it's not really what they're usually doing, is that they're just, I mean, you said it, like, so in the moment that they don't even bother trying to sound smart, which might sound like an insult, but you know what I mean. Like they're just with the moment and they're just like, I actually don't know what's gonna happen. Oh my God, like, oh. And that is so much better than trying to be hype and guess what's going on. Because that's usually gonna result in a failure. But yeah, I found it so fascinating. And I did switch. I did swap from being like, yeah, I like play-by-play casters, and obviously it's a really important part of the broadcast, to being like, oh my god, actually their job is harder. Hold on here.
It's way harder. It sounds easier to like the untrained ear, but actually it is really, really difficult. The best play-by-play guys are just incredible. I mean, I found it interesting with PUBG. Um, you kind of have to be able to do play-by-play, even if you're an analyst caster, because of just there's so much going on all the time, and you kind of have to be aware of it. You kind of have to be setting everything up. Like almost, I treat analyst casting in PUBG more as like storytelling, right? Where I'm here to set the stage, to give to explain what's maybe about to happen, why it's happening that way, give the audience the wherewithal to know everything that they're about to see, and then hand it over to the play-by-play guy to deliver the moments once they come. And sometimes you get stuck. You're in the middle of saying something and something wild happens, or they cut to, sorry, my camera kind of, I got a little too close. They cut to something else in PUBG where you got to be like just ready to switch on a dime, because it isn't just a two-player, you're a two-team or two-player thing. It's 16 teams at once. So you kind of got to
Hmm.
be ready for that. So it is a bit of a challenge. I mean, I'm lucky in a way that I really got in at the ground floor of the first Battle Royale esport. So I'm able to kind of feel the casting out, because it is a little different than other things for sure.
That sounds extremely difficult. Just because I've seen some PUBG, and yeah, like you have to go from building the story of this one team, perhaps playing it very slow and conservative, and you like the observer. Like I don't know how much like in tune you've become with your observers. Like we've had the same observers in StarCraft for a while, so there's a little bit of like in tune-ness, even though we're not talking to each other. But for PUBG, it sounds even more difficult because they could really just be like, they can't not go to the thing that's about to kill a team, right? But you could be talking about a team, setting up a story, and then bam, this team's getting shot at, and they're about to be eliminated from, well, this round, I suppose. But that sounds extremely difficult. Do you just turn on a dime? Do you go from like, yes, yes, quite storytelling, oh my god, look what's happening? Or is there a smoother transition possible?
Yeah. No, there's just not. Ideally, you would like a smoother transition. Really good observers, like, okay, so I usually work with Korean observers, one way or another. For most of the big international events, we have been using Korean observers for PUBG, and a lot of the other casters are used to European or NA observers. And this isn't everybody's really good at it. Actually, everybody's gotten really good. So for me, it's not that hard. I'm so used to the Korean style of observing. I understand what they're trying to do and why they're trying to show what they're trying to show a lot of the times. But for some of the other casters, it is really jarring for them to just switch on a dime and not expect that switch necessarily. And this isn't to say they're not paying attention or anything like this. It's just different observing styles that they're not used to. And so you have to be ready to do that. And you'll hear casters kind of like sometimes in competitive PUBG be like, I don't know why we switched there, but we're going over here. Like, and you're kind of like, well, I try not to do that, usually, but um, it's really hard. You're right. You do just have to be able to turn on a dime. Now, as you build kind of a comfortableness with whatever observers you're working with, it becomes easier to avoid having to do that. But regardless, because of the nature of PUBG, it's going to happen sometimes anyway. So you do have to be ready for it, and you got to just be ready to like turn the hype thrusters on,
Yeah.
like right away.
That sounds difficult to do. Like even with StarCraft, even if something else is happening, you usually can have one eye on the mini map. Because it's not usually five things. It's battle and then like a drop. But PUBG sounds like a one of the more complicated esports. Now, I'm gonna compare it to Overwatch for a second because I do think that these are both games that the storytelling crafted in these games sound much more difficult than my own game, but that's also a lot of bias, right? But Overwatch is like a big, I'm going to say clusterfuck of a battle happening very abruptly and then ending, and then very abruptly and then ending. And I have my own opinions of it as an esport, but PUBG, not nearly as bad. But PUBG kind of has the same thing where it's like, how do you craft a story when a game has so many different elements to it? Like, are you, because I also don't even know how you guys do your tournament format? Like I have an idea, but not a good
Mm.
idea. So I guess start with that. How do you guys even craft a tournament? What is your usual format?
So typically, for like a big event, we'll have like a group stage. So we'll invite 24 or 32 teams or whatever it is. And we'll have like a group stage where usually it's like a round robin kind of thing where each group plays each other once. And then the top, let's say 8 teams go straight to the finals, the grand finals, where the other 16 teams have to play their own like semifinal. And then the top 8 from that semifinal go to the finals to get your 16 team lobby for the finals. And then you get points. So you get points based on placement. So if you're first place, you get 10 points. If you're second place, you get 6 points, etc. Down to like 8th place is usually the last team that gets a point in current what we call super settings. And then you get a kill, you get a point for every kill.
Mm,
So that's how you make points. So some teams focus on being very aggressive and picking up kills to get the bulk of their points, whereas others play, like you mentioned earlier, cautious. They're going to try to weasel out, not weasel, but try to sneak out, placement points as they are trying to avoid fighting as much as they can. Not to say they aren't good at fighting, they totally can, but their philosophy is just different.
yeah, interesting. So with that format, how do you build a storyline? Like, do you guys have stats people who are constantly updating you as to like who are point leaders, or is it something that you don't want to focus too much on the minute details, or what?
Yeah, we have stats people that keep us up to date on a lot of stuff. We keep track of stats like total damage done, because that kind of matters in PUBG because of the nature, because you have to wear vests and helmets and those kind of things. So understanding how much damage you're doing to people, kills, of course, and there's some other stats we keep track of, like grenades used or revives done, various other things to help kind of build a narrative for the players that way. The storylines in game usually you're going to be kind of focusing on the teams that are doing really well. But what we'll do, so the setup we typically have, so people know as a PUBG caster, is I have my own monitor, a PGM we call it, right? The program monitor, where I see the main screen of what the observers are watching. And my co-caster also has one of their own.
Hmm.
And then in the middle between us is the map screen, so we can always have the map there so we can watch it. So as an analyst, I'm often kind of shifting around between the both of them a lot, and the play-by-play guy is much more focused on his own monitor. But I'm watching the map a lot to try to set up stories. Be like, even if, because sometimes there's just nothing going on in competitive PUBG, and you have to like build like this team's going here. How are they going to move to their next spot? How are they going to get there? The circle moved away from them. Are they going to take vehicles? What other teams might they run into? So you got to try to like set the narrative of possibilities for them, and then try to build the story that way. And of course, you're going to be more focused on the teams that are doing well than not, typically. And so you just got to kind of be aware of all those things, and really trying to build that that tower together.
Yeah. Sounds really difficult. With experience and time, have you gotten better at just not mentioning things that are, not important?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I when I first started, I went back and I just watched my first broadcast. Since I watched it after I first did it, of course, to do VOD review. But I haven't watched it since then. So it's been about 2 years. And I was giving out so much what actually is useless information, like about stats about guns and some other weird PUBG oddities that people don't really need to know. But I was like trying to flex that I like really knew the game,
Hmm.
and so there's like, yeah, it's knowing when to use that information. Like, yes, I have that information, but I don't just need to randomly ramble about it. That's just pointless. You got to find the right moments to assert that knowledge. Be like, oh, this player probably heard these footsteps because they were on, for example, this type of surface, and that surface, the sound travels further in PUBG than it does, and that's why they were able to hear this or something like that.
Wow, so much more involved. Um, yeah. I mean, that would be expected. I think it is something that's common amongst all these sports, but it just sounds like there's so many more things happening um, in PUBG. Do you think that your initial focus on an analyst, like as important as it is for growing out of that, do you think that it's important though that you started off being quite analytical? Like, how was the public response to you? Did it contribute to your rise in any way that people were like, yeah, he absolutely knows the game?
Yes, that definitely helped. I was also kind of one of the few guys that kind of held out here in Korea for doing competitive PUBG. There were some others doing it, but I kind of like really threw myself into it because I really love this game. I really believe in it, and so I gave it everything I had. And so I ended up knowing a lot more, especially about the Korea teams, for example, than just about anybody else in the world. And so I was able to come out there and explain what the Koreans were doing, why they were doing it that way, why they were doing stuff that no one else in the world was doing, and why it was working, because they were winning everything, just like Koreans tend to do in esports. And so I was explaining why. And so, yeah, I definitely gained a lot of kind of notoriety for being the guy who knew Korea. And now, I know a lot about Asia now. I've done a lot of China and Japan as well, and like Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Indonesia, Vietnam. The game is extremely popular in those places too. So it's kind of being able to bring the team knowledge was probably the bigger thing. And then, yeah, just my technical knowledge. There's a lot of people who have that, but that you have to have that basis, right? That baseline. But what really set me apart was knowing the teams extremely well.
So would you consider being in Korea actually a big benefit to your career in PUBG, or do you have to kind of balance it with the whole like it's more difficult to fly you out to events?
Overall, it's a benefit, especially because the company's headquarters are located here. So recently,
Mm.
I've been doing a news show with PUBG for the
Oh,
esports, where we just like once every 2 or 3 weeks, we put together a little show about what's going on in PUBG esports. And me and my co-host Annie, we sit down and we talk about these things, and we like interview teams or whatever. And so that's really cool. Like that gives me exposure. Like, they put these videos on the PUBG client, like they have a little scrolling like ad thing, and I see my face up there. It's really weird. Like I'm like, oh, it's me. Like, oh god. And now like when I'm casting PUBG tournaments during the commercial breaks, they take clips from our news show and put it on during the breaks. And I'm like, God, get it away. Like I already hear myself talk enough. Like, stop. But so it's really been a benefit for me in that way, because the company is located here and I have a really good relationship with them on top of it. Like the staff that works there, we get along really well. I'm able to kind of vocalize my ideas and my opinions, and they give me the same kind of thing. There's good communication between us, and so that's nice. So yeah, definitely it helps, and also it helps, I think, because Korea in general, like once they get serious about any esport, they're going to be good at it. They're going to compete in it, and so it's cool to be here because the Koreans are always invested in their esports and will always try to be the best. And a lot of times they are the best.
are they the best in PUBG?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they are. It's close. China is very close. So it's a couple of Europe teams. They're very close. But right now, the Korean teams are just a little bit ahead.
Wow, interesting. I mean, I always had the same thought. Like basically, if Korea really enjoys an esport, they're going to be the best at it. It even happened in Dota, and like not many Koreans play Dota, but there was that one TI where was it MVP? Who was it?
Was
Ah,
it MB? I don't know.
I don't know, but like there was one Korean Dota team that was actually doing like really really well, and they were like, "What the hell?" But that's what happens when they really put their mind on things, I guess. So interesting to hear that it's the same case for PUBG. I haven't watched enough tournaments to really figure out, I guess, that balance. So that would definitely make it good. I mean, I think that's some reason why Tasteless had such a marketability is that they did come from a region that no one else is really doing, and obviously their innate skill, but certainly helped. So I mean, it does I don't know how many international gigs have you done? International being outside of Korea.
Let's see. For PUBG, well, we had one big international gig here in Seoul, so I'm going to count that one,
Okay.
even though I know that's not technically, but it was an international gig. So I've done 4.
Mm,
Yeah, 4 for PUBG, and then I've done a couple other games. I did like for WCG, I did Clash Royale last year in China, and some Crossfire, and I've done Point Blank, which is another first-person shooter style, more like Crossfire.
okay.
That I did that in Russia. I was supposed to go to the Philippines this year, but that got canceled. This things did. But yeah, so I think I've done 6 or 7 international events now.
Okay. I was just gonna ask, like, do you consider your do they consider, I suppose, when they come to you with an offer like that, they have to travel you out of Korea? Because it's something StarCraft 2 is talked about, but amongst the casters, but I think we would all say that it's not I don't know if this is like revealing too much information. The idea is that it's not supposed to really impact the decision making where you come from, but it's got to, right? Getting people from Australia is literally twice or three times as much as getting the person from literally the state that the event is in, right? So do you ever
Mm,
find that being a
yep.
problem? Do they actually communicate more openly about that problem with you?
I have had, yeah, it's not often actually. Um, typically, people just kind of, it's hard to explain. A lot of times I'm working for companies that are based out of, like, production companies that are based out of Korea or China anyway. So they're already traveling a bunch of their staff to these events. So I'm just kind of lumped in as part of that group.
Ah,
So usually it's not a big deal. I did have one event where there was a little bit of kind of haggling about my daily rate because it did cost a little extra to fly me out there. It wasn't, and it ended up being perfectly fine. Like, it wasn't a big deal at all. But typically, actually, the weird part is now Seoul, they've really worked to expand the airport here and increase the number of flights, the number of direct flights to places. So that's actually brought the price down a little bit. Like, I can usually get round trip flights to Chicago out of Incheon for less than $1,000 now. If I really look hard and don't go like during a weekend or something like that, like if I'm willing to be a little flexible in my schedule. So it's not super bad, but yeah, coming out of Australia, man, like poor Maynard, dude, like God, it's so far, and the flights are long, which is grueling as a
mm,
human being, and then yeah, the price is high, so I feel it. It's Korea's not so bad, but there is occasionally that thing that comes up.
yeah. I mean, for Korea, it's like 13 hours to America, most places.
Yeah.
So not comparable really to the 20 hours or plus, depending how many layovers they have. So yeah, it's definitely a part of it. But I would still say that, I mean, it's still a much longer journey than a lot of these guys coming from Europe to NA or vice versa, or
Mm.
North America, Canada, and US. Like, so has the travel ever like affected you at all, or have you already been used to traveling?
I like to travel, so that makes it easy for me. I
Mm,
love to go new places. I find new experiences to be exhilarating. Um, what actually sucks is when I come back to Korea and I'm just wrecked because I'm jet lagged. I'm tired. Usually I'm coming back, right. You know this, like the day after the event is done, they send you
yeah.
out, and there was an after party for the event that night, and you're staying out late doing those kind of things, and then you get like 4 hours of sleep, you got to get on a plane, you're hungover, you're like, oh God, and you get on this plane and you're trying to sleep and you can't, and you get home and you're just like, oh, this is horrible. For like 3 days you're just a mess. And I would say that's the hardest part. And I did have one time where it like interfered with my like ability to do a job here in Korea. I was supposed to do this event the day after I got back from flying, and I was so tired and so jet lagged when I set my alarm for the next day. I put it onto PM instead of AM. And so I woke up late for the cast, and I was like an hour late for I felt so bad. But so since then I've kind of learned how to use my time a little more effectively when I'm traveling. I need to give myself a little more space, especially after I come back.
Yeah. That was the other question I was going to ask, is that do you have to stream or do any other events outside of like the huge gigs, and has it affected any of them? But
Mm.
got my answer. So yeah, I'm usually pretty smart about that too. But even I've done some really dumb stuff. Actually, the time I was in Korea for 3 months, I actually just it was just one of those sequence of events where like things popped up. So I ended up spending 9 weeks in Korea, but actually I spent 6 weeks in Korea because I went to three different events. And I flew back like immediately every time, and I was like, "This is such a dumb idea. Not smart."
it's hard, you know. It's especially like for you because you're bouncing around a lot, and you know, if you want to stay in Korea, like the hub of StarCraft and that kind of thing, yeah, it's really awkward, and then you got to kind of deal with like finding a place to stay and
Yeah,
all this
yeah.
other junk. You know, there's oddities that go into it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Korea is definitely one of those just ideal places, you know, like if it could be more ideal rather, but like it's so great that I wish it was. I wish it was literally right next to the east coast of USA. I wish that it was you know, really easy to get a visa there and all that because I don't want to do visa hopping, but wasn't in the cards. And it is weird because the same, you know, the StarCraft sorry, Korea is the mecca of StarCraft, but really there's nothing actually involved with Blizzard over there. There's Blizzard Korea obviously, but like but for you and PUBG, it really literally is. Like you are doing a Korean esport developed by Koreans for a Korean audience a lot of the time with the best Korean players as well. So it seems to be a really big boon to actually be available there. So it really worked out quite well for you. Did you have any idea that how to put this? Like when PUBG came out, were you like, you know what, this all like it ticks off every single box. Like this is the esport I'm gonna do? Or was it really just that fortunate thing working for Africa?
No, I didn't think it when I first started playing PUBG. It ticked off boxes in that this was a game like idea I had when I was a kid, and it like was something I like dreamed about being able to play someday, and it finally happened. Like this kind of idea, and I just fell in love with the game. I didn't even think about esports for PUBG. The first like one of the first real PUBG esports events took place about a year before I got into it, a little more than a year. And I watched it and thought, well, maybe I enjoyed it. It was cool to see what these players were doing, how they thought about the game, and how it was completely different than I was thinking about the game at the time. So that was kind of fun. And then the events started to get kind of bigger and bigger, like DreamHacks started picking them up, and ESL and all these big esports companies. And I started watching them more and more, and I'm like, I love this. This is so fascinating. Like, you put the map screen on one of your monitors, and your other monitor, you put the main game. And it's so cool to like watch what the teams are doing and how they're thinking about things. And oh my God, this is so fun. And I was really starting to get into it. And then just kind of fortune, you know, as things go in life, sometimes out of nowhere, you just get lightning strikes and you have to take advantage of it. And I was extremely lucky to be where I was at the time I was and be the person I am because I just loved the game. And so it made it easy once the call came.
Yeah, everything just worked out really well. Everything fit into place so perfectly. So that's really awesome. So your first event, you said that's the really big one. What was it called?
The Face It Global Summit. It was in London.
Yeah. So I thought it was Face It, but yeah. I watched some of that because I saw you doing your first event. I saw the talent announcement. I was like, oh shit, damn man, he's actually like made it. So I watched some of it, and I I'm not particularly interested in PUBG, but I can be interested in any esport where I think like the commentary isn't really bad at least because I've watched some like mobile games where the commentary is like, let's say, questionable, but yeah, but it was a fun experience. But anyways, how did you get over those nerves that you talked about when you actually got this
Mm.
first big event?
They just kind of worked themselves out. I generally don't get nervous in
Hmm.
front of cameras at all. I don't get nervous doing public speaking, basically ever. For some reason, it just comes natural to me. Like the first time I casted in front of a camera at Africa, I was more nervous about getting makeup done than I was about being on camera. I'm not even kidding. Like the makeup thing, I was like sitting in the chair. The lady's like touching my face. I'm like, oh, okay. Like this is weird. But like once that all happens, I don't know, maybe there's something about having the makeup on that kind of gives you like a mask, you feel like, maybe, I don't know. But so anyway, so I get to this event at the Face of Global Summit. I'm nervous as shit because this is my first big one. This is like where I have to put if I really want to keep doing these things, I got to put my stamp on this. I got to really do something. And the first day I was pretty nervous, and I went back and listened to it again recently because it was about a year ago now. And yeah, I could tell I was nervous. I was kind of fumbling over my words a bit more than I usually do, and these kind of things. But after the first day and just kind of talking with, Matrim, my co-caster, and it was the first time we had worked together, and we just kind of talked things over. That really made me more comfortable. Like, he was very encouraging. He's like, dude, you're really good. He's like, I really like working with you. Like, let's keep building this and let's do this. And, the second day went much better. The third day, by the time the third day happened, where we had that huge moment with that player who killed an entire squad with one grenade, basically. After that, I was like, no, I was meant to do this. I don't know a better way to put it. It just felt right. And so from then on, I don't get nervous at all. It's just fun. It's really fun.
Wow, that is a beautiful sentiment. Yeah, I agree about the makeup thing. By the way, I was most nervous about makeup too. Especially because
it's weird.
It's just in general. I'm not a person who used to wear makeup, and then I thought I would have extra difficulties because I have bad skin, and on top of that, I've been to events where they're just sort of like, oh, I didn't know a girl was here. They didn't have enough makeup, and I was like, oh, wow, all right. So yeah, that can be nerve wracking. But you're right about the mask thing, and with or without makeup, I'm always like, I will always say, like, I'm putting on a mask. It's more like just being 110% of you. I think that makes sense to people who know what I'm talking about. To everyone else, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. But you could also say it's kind of putting on a mask, because I'm not at all like what I am up on that stage, especially if I'm not talking about StarCraft, which seems to be a common element as well. I always thought you were as a very like sociable guy, like you're very easy to get along with. But are you anything like you are on that stage? Is that just 110% of you, or is it a bit of a mask?
No, I think 110% is a good way to put it. I would say that's pretty damn accurate. I don't think I'm as much like myself as I am, I guess. Like, this is actually really funny that we're talking about this, because I just talked to Nick about this the other day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he and I were just like kind of talking. He's like, no, actually, I think you're very similar on camera as to who you are in person. And I'm like, really? And I kind of, it kind of was like, I guess, like, I'm pretty sociable. I'm pretty just kind of, I like to go out and be with people and talking with my friends, especially. That's one of my favorite things to do here in Korea is go to a convenience store, sit at a table, grab a couple beers, and just talk for hours with my close friends. Like, I've done it with you here. It's just so fun. It's just like, that's what I live for, is these conversations.
Yeah. God, I miss that so much about Korea. Ugh. And soju prices, man. Like, I don't have to tell you, I think that like in America, it's like $15 for a bottle, and it's like, this makes no sense.
There's no way it costs that much to ship it there.
Right?
It's $1.50 here. Like, come on.
Yeah. I went to Toronto once and it was $20, and I was like, what? What the? Okay.
No. I have an uncle who really likes soju, actually. So whenever I come back to America, he wants me to bring him bottles of it because it's so much cheaper in Korea.
Right? God, yeah. Bring over a case for the amount. Yeah. Anyways. But I think that actually, because I also had a really fortunate experience when I was over there for an extended period of time, where I finally got to actually go out late at night, because I was still working on a schedule back then. And were you there? I don't remember if you were there or not. We went to the typical pub bar place, whatever you want to call it, that all of the esports casters went to.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Mm-hmm. We don't name names, but yes, I know what you mean.
Right, because it's a super secret.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we went there, and it was a very surreal experience, not because I was meeting a bunch of famous people or anything like that. Although there was a little bit of that. I was like, oh my God. But it was just like all of you guys just get together and talk. And there's such a common theme in Korea across esports, across the analysts, play, but like, it doesn't matter. You guys just always have a reason to get together. Sometimes it's a big party, sometimes a small one. But do you ever think back on that and be like, man, that actually really helped me become a caster? I mean, the connections you made, the way you could open up to a bunch of people and just talk is literally what you do for commentary. Do you actually see that almost like a I don't know, experience building?
Undoubtedly. Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, I'm lucky that all these guys are really cool, really nice. Like, we have, like, all of us casters here that live in Korea are close. We, like you said, we hang out, we go for drinks or meals or whatever. We just want to be with each other and talk because we all really like each other's company. The games, of course, helps because it gives us a common starting ground. Like, I've always loved esports, so it's easy for me to talk about those things with them, and they can give me a lot of insight that I maybe wouldn't have had otherwise. So yeah, definitely it helps. And it also helps they're just good dudes, and they're easy to hang out with, and they're cool, and they're fun, and they've always been really kind to me. And like I said, like ever since I made a go at doing this thing, they've all been really supportive of me. And I'm really truly lucky.
Yeah. They do a really excellent job of not making you feel like it's not like going into the old boys club or anything like that. And they're like, oh, it's some, intern that the guy brought or something like that. Like you just are part of the group if you're, not, I guess I was gonna say not Korean, but that's not even true either. There's plenty of the Korean guys who speak English that hang out as well. Um, yeah, it's just a nice community, as far as I was able to see.
I think like we're all really focused on just being good people. Like we're just we love our job. There is some competition between us from time to time with things, but nobody ever really gets really salty about it or does anything weird. We all just try to be the best we can be in our professional lives. And then, in our personal lives, we just all want to get along and have a good time, no matter who's there. Like everybody from anywhere is welcome. Anytime people come for, like, I had one of my friends come from out of the country for one of the PUBG finals for the very last one, the very last PKL we did in 2018. And he came here, and my buddies, Nick and all these other guys, Atlas, they treated him like he was, one of their best friends. They went out of their
Yeah,
way to show him a good time, and like they want to show you that Korea's awesome and that there's fun stuff to do here. So it's really like a great kind of amalgamation of like dudes who do something really interesting and are also really cool people.
yeah. I gotta imagine having all the hardships they did going into Korea. Just being a foreigner in a foreign country and all that, like, helped them because that's my experience as well. Like, I was in StarCraft, I was pretty well known, 5 years ago at this point. Holy shit, 5 years ago. Yeah, like 4 or 5 years ago. But like, there was really no reason for Tasteless to help me as much as he did when I first went to Korea for an extended period of time. But he actually really helped me a lot. So always defend you guys. But
We
it
defend
sounds
you.
oh, thank you.
Yes.
Sounds like just a really awesome environment to be in. And that's one of the reasons I'm so jealous of anyone who actually gets to live in Korea. But it's not all perfect sparkles and flowers, I guess.
No.
You brought up competition with the other, or the lack of competition, really. Like, there is competition, but there's not any hard feelings or anything like that. Is Are there a lot of amateur casters that you've noticed that are still trying to do the whole like move to Korea and make it big thing, or is that kind of leveled off?
I don't see it with amateurs. I see it more with professionals. Um, I've had people reach out to me that this is stuff I would have never expected. Where they reach out to me and they're like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about moving to Korea. Like, what's the caster job situation like?" And I'm like, "Whoa, okay." And I'm like, it's like weird because I want everyone that wants to move here to be able to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's quite fascinating. But it's there. The amateur scene, I would say, has probably died. There isn't too much of that going on anymore. Who knows? With something like Valorant coming out, maybe that'll change. Uh, you never know. Everything kind of goes in ebbs and flows. But right now, it's mostly pretty settled with who's here and doing what. I haven't seen too many new things come up here in Korea recently.
Okay. So you're actually pretty well set. Like, you brought up the guys who, I mean, they replaced Monte and Doa like years ago at this point.
Mm,
Well, Papa Smith replaced one of them, and then he
yep. And now he's
retired.
manager. No,
Yeah, yeah,
he's a general manager for 100 Thieves.
yeah. I know, but I was like, is retired from casting the right way to put it? I don't know. But yeah, he moved on to
I,
a
I I
behind the
would be
scenes role.
surprised if he comes back at some
Right?
point.
Yeah. It's like when pros say they quit. Like, if they say they're quitting, they're not really.
Yeah.
If they just disappear, then it's for real.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah. So that actually, I mean, do you think you have a fair amount of job security then?
I like to think so, but sometimes I don't know. So here's the weird thing. Coming into this year, I felt great.
Mm.
I was very fortunate to be doing the big PUBG events for the PUBG Global Championship, which is our big end of the year event we had last year. Again, I was very lucky to be chosen. Me and Matrim were chosen as the duo for the grand finals. So for the very final games of the last day, so we got to do the trophy moment and all this stuff, which is, I'm extremely lucky to be put in that position. And so that was really cool. I was really excited about this year. Even with some of the changes to PUBG Esports, they're scaling it back like officially just because last year didn't quite go as well as they would have liked. But I felt pretty good. I was already getting calls to be doing stuff, like I said, in the Philippines and other places. And then the coronavirus happened. And all of a sudden, I was just like, I can't spend any money. If I don't know. I don't know where my job's going. I have no idea. Like, I have to just sit around. Like, I was looking for a new apartment at the time. And I took a trip to Japan for vacation because I was just like, yeah, this is the only time I'm going to have time for vacation this year. I'm going to be so busy. I won't even know what to do with myself. And then I went to an event in Sweden, came back, and it was just the world just locked down after that. So I felt good about it until recently, but things seem like they're going to stabilize here pretty soon. At least in Korea, we're kind of over the hump. It may be, hopefully, fingers crossed that this is about over here. And things are starting to pop up again.
Yeah, I guess I kind of threw a really like a fastball at you like that.
Oh, it's okay.
I meant more as in like, is there anyone else clamoring after your job? But
oh, hell yeah, there always is.
Okay.
There always will be. That's just part of the job. So that's why I go back to what Nick told me. Just be good. Just get better. Constantly. You're never good enough. You're like, that's always what I tell myself. I'm never good enough. I'll go back and watch stuff that I thought was great, and then I'll watch it again and I'll be like, oh, that was not good. I hated that. And people will tell me, they're like, wow, that was a really good cast. And I'm like, nope, I hated it. I hated the whole thing. Like, nope. And but you always got to be kind of focused on being better, because there's going to be people that want this job. This is a wonderful job in a way. You get to talk about video games with, you and I, we talk about this all the time. This is what we love. We love these games. So there's other people who are the same way, who kind of have ideas about doing this. So you just got to keep getting better.
Yeah. I mean, the way you put it, like, I agree with you, but just like, I'm never good enough just sounds like a really sad thing. But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Do you ever have moments when you do these jobs, especially offline jobs that are, you can't just unwind and go back to your house and be like, oh, that sucked. Where you do just sit there and you're like, damn, like I am off today.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember at some of the big events when I was traveling, where I just got back to my hotel room and I was just like, all right, what do I need to do tomorrow? Like, let's get some sleep. Let's eat some good food. Let's make sure I'm not over caffeinated or under caffeinated. Like, there's kind of like a baseline you learn to hit. Let's make sure I drink plenty of water so I don't have to worry about my voice, maybe getting a little hoarse or something like that. Let's do my vocal exercises so I feel comfortable, projecting from my diaphragm and all these other things. That's really important. A lot of things. You're basically a singer as a caster. A lot of people don't kind of understand this. If you're doing it properly, you're basically singing. And so anyway, it's just kind of like, you try to, when I have those, because I definitely do, and I'm sure you have too, I just try to refocus and just try to do good things to make me and my body feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a lot of that at Katowice, and then there's, all our respective just cringe moments that we really hope that the audience doesn't remember, but it's something you remember, No one remembers that you waved at the wrong guy, but you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or you called the unit the wrong name, or
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's been a couple moments where I'm just like, oh my God, you were so stupid. Yeah.
I have had those too. Don't worry. I've had the exact same things, Jessica.
Yeah.
It happens.
But so it sounds like you approach that actually very in a practice method. Like, sometimes I ask these questions, people are like, oh, I just chill and just have a good night and like, hang out with my buddies. And it's like, it's very not I don't want to say not professional, but you know what I mean. Like you're talking about breathing exercises and making sure that your voice is good to go and technical stuff. Really, more of what like a
Mm,
voice actor or as you said, a singer
mm.
would make sure to do. So, have you looked into all this stuff? Has this been something that you've always known, or have you studied more since you became a caster?
No, I've studied more since I became a caster. It's stuff that I kind of already knew. So actually, one of my best friends, Nick and mine, best friends out here in Korea, is a voice actor, and so sorry, my camera's shaking a little bit here. I'm trying to pour some more coffee into my cup. So he taught me a lot about getting better with my voice, just using my voice as a tool much better. And the reason that if I let's say I have a bad cast, the reason I focus on my body and my voice is that I don't want to have to think about those things the next day or the next cast. Like if those aren't even a concern, if those aren't even on my mind, that's just another thing that my brain isn't thinking about to open up space to make the casting better. So I'm trying to eliminate any and all distractions I can to just get back to doing a good job.
That is such an interesting way to look at it. I never thought about that before, but you're right. It's just one less thing to worry about. Um, like there's a time where in Katowice again, like end of the day, so this is what caused me to be like, oh, I'm not doing well today, and all bummed out at the drinks that later that night. But I was casting with Pig, and I remember I was trying to do a bit of hype, and then I lost control of my voice basically, which,
Mm.
as I mentioned, I've really tried to work on and not do that. Like, and that kind of happened, and it was actually just like now I'm just thinking all about how my voice isn't working like how I want it to, which yeah is gonna drag you down, right? So that's an interesting way of looking at it. The less you can actually even think about what you do with your voice, the better you're going to be, especially when it comes to hype casting. That's so cool.
Yeah, the more natural you can make it, the easier it is, definitely. So that's kind of again, I'm really lucky to not just have casters by my side as friends, but I have a professional voice actor who's I don't want to give away who he is, but he's done some pretty amazing stuff uh, that can teach me some other things as well. So I again, this whole tornado of luck just is spinning around me, and I'm so fortunate to be where I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the voice is super super important, and I say that, and I'm like, well, I don't always treat my voice the best either, but
I was gonna say I know who you're talking about. He's a really cool dude, and unfortunately, I haven't really gotten to talk to him about voice acting or controlling your voice because I think the one time I asked, we were about 6 soju shots in. So, I mean, speaking of not
as
taking
we
care of your
do,
voice.
yeah, it's hard to remember things after that, right?
Yeah. I think we just kind of went in circles.
Yeah, that happens.
But yeah, we don't take, I actually, I've gotten, because I'm doing voice acting and all that, I had a voiceover coach. And I remember one of the first things he like discussed was taking care of your voice. And he was like, you drink soda? And I was like, yeah, like a normal human being. He's like, don't drink soda. And I was like,
Mm.
oh no. I don't know if I can do that, man. And he very much, he was like 60 or something. And he was like, it might be fine now, but it won't be fine in the future. He was like that guy, in Mean Girls. He's like, don't have sex. You're going to get AIDS, you'll die. Like,
Uh,
oh, okay.
but you kind of need that sometimes just to be told, like bluntly, like, "Hey, don't do this thing." And I know, like, like some of the things I do are not good, and so I need to be better. But yeah, it's hard. So what about you? I'm actually curious. What like when you have a bad cast, what do you do afterwards? Like when you're like when you're at one of these events.
It's changed up. It really depends on when I have like bad issues. Like I don't usually get nervous either, but if I really want to do well and focus, I put on music. I have one song that I listen to really hype me up. I think it's worked out pretty well. I used to draw when I would get like excited about something just to like let it out kind of thing. If I'm
Mm.
really depressed, like after a day and just like, oh, I don't know what to do, usually drinking, which doesn't help the voice, but
We all do that. That's the secret to being a
yeah,
caster.
yeah. Usually, like honestly, just getting with the other casters and kind of going over it. some of the casters are totally willing to be like, yeah, like that was just kind of a weird day. And other casters are like, no, you did fine. But talking it out. And then at the time for Katowice, I was in a really healthy place. You're talking about the whole COVID striking at a time when you were on their high. This happened to me too. I was on cloud nine, man. I'd been to Australia. I was invited to do Katowice. I was going to the gym every day for a month and I had gotten into running. So at the time, I would go to the gym and just like anger run. You know what I mean? Where you just focus on
Yes,
the thing that's bothering you and you run like an insane amount. So those are
I've
the
done
things that I
this.
do.
I've
Yeah.
done that. I do it with weightlifting more, but yes, I know exactly what you mean. Like I've had that exercise thing where I'm like, oh, I'm really angry about everything. Like, oh, it's fueling my desire to do whatever I'm doing. I totally get you. Like, I mean, yeah, I was like watching this stuff. I'm like, ZombieGrub's all over the place. This is great. I was like really excited to like see you doing, especially Katowice and stuff like that. I mean, I think now that's like the biggest event for StarCraft of the year, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that's freaking so cool. But then COVID.
Yeah. I mean, we'll never know like how good this year could have been. This is the inaugural year for the new format of StarCraft 2, which is important to us. And then just in general, there was supposed to be more there could have been more interest in StarCraft 2 with the shift of who's really working with the tournaments, but we'll never know. Everything's been canceled. And for every esport really. And it's fortunate that at least for StarCraft, we were never such top dogs that we could sustain ourselves purely in offline events.
Mm,
The only people who can do that are Tasteless, and that's a whole different scenario. And even they are
right.
streaming now, both of them.
Yep.
So, we were fortunate enough for that, but it's got to be really tough for all the people who, I mean, don't stream, but also like their jobs aren't something that's really translatable to a stream, like interviewers. Like, what do they do? Hop on a call for
Mm,
30 minutes and 15 minutes? Like, it's not the same as being in the player pit,
if they
being like,
can't. Yeah, I know. Like, I'm friends with Ashley Kong, who is LCK journalist here. She speaks both Korean and English, so she interviews the Korean players and then translates everything onto her page. And I mean, it's been difficult to she was on the up and up. It was going very well for her as well. People were really liking her content, and then this thing happened, and she can't interview these players face to face. So fortunately, she can do the webcam thing like what we're doing now to interview players, but it's not the same, right? It just doesn't, when you're interviewing a player, it doesn't have that same feeling as being right next to them.
yeah. And just for like, yeah. Yeah, there's so many people that I really hope are working out, I guess, saved for a rainy day or rainy months. But this is just, ultimately sucked for everything esports. I don't think
It's been really bad. It's
anyone's
been
denying
really
that.
bad.
Yeah, and
No.
really TBD on when things are gonna calm down again because we're international. While Korea's over the hump, America's question mark. We're gonna open, but I'm not sure anyone's gonna want to come here. Kind of thing. Uh, yeah, so big question marks. I know like some places have already said that they're willing to go totally online for otherwise purely offline production. Is that the same thing for you in PUBG, just moving everything online?
Yeah, they've done that. So originally, the plan for this year was to have like 4 majors. Essentially, we're going to call it the PUBG Global Series or something. I'm trying to remember the exact acronym because like
PUBG
half of our
GS,
lives are learning fucking acronyms. It's
right?
like we're in the military or something. So we were gonna have like 4 majors and of course the final at the end of the year. So they canceled the first 3 majors now, and it's all online. And they're separating the regions into Asia, Europe, North America, and APAC, which is Southeast Asia and Australia and New Zealand. And it's all online now. So they're doing the best they can with it. I'm sure StarCraft is probably going to be doing something similar.
I assume I've heard that they have plans, but they're really trying to. They would absolutely prefer to do, um, just do it later, right?
Yeah.
But it might not be an option, so who knows? But like, I would assume that like ping affects all esports to in a way that pros rightfully will always complain, like it's not fair. Same thing for PUBG, I assume.
Say that again. The what will affect
The
the pros?
the ping, like
The
if
ping. The
yeah,
ping. Yes. 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 It's funny because it's nice here in Seoul because like if you're running just a Korea tournament, like everybody's living in Seoul anyway, and you get
Sure.
like at worst 5 milliseconds, 6 milliseconds of ping,
Mm.
and that's nothing. That's like unnoticeable as a human being, but it definitely starts to make a difference once you start getting up in the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Some players play on like 100, 120. That does affect things to some amount for sure.
Yeah, I figured it would even be more in shooters though, but I'm not sure.
I would guess so. Um, I I haven't played enough StarCraft on bad ping to say. I've played a lot of PUBG on bad ping because I play with my friends back in America quite often, and there is some oddities and some weird stuff that happens just because of the delay. But generally, games have gotten pretty good about making it feel like what you're doing on your screen is what's happening. It's just like what happens on another player's screen then affects me because like I'll be like move behind a wall because I know somebody's trying to like peek me and shoot me, and then I'll die behind the wall because they had already peeked
Yeah.
and shot by the time I like figured it out.
Yeah,
And so that could
exactly.
be a little frustrating, but when it comes to my shooting, like it feels pretty natural.
Yeah, I've played C- Black Ops actually, I think, with Maynard, but
Mm.
it was one of those things where Maynard would just be like, "Cool, I saw nothing," and then I died because we're all on
Yeah.
North American server. Um, so that's why like it's got to be more. I guess with StarCraft, you feel it for a long amount of time, so it's more tilting. Where at least in shooters, it's like once and you're dead, and you're like, "Ah, okay, next game." Like I guess maybe that's the big difference. Anyways, it's got to be frustrating to do all this online, no matter what. Internet's not that fantastic. Couple last questions because we're nearing the end of the
Sure.
podcast. You
Sure.
mentioned that you now work with a specific caster. Is that just for the offline events, or do you work a lot with him for online stuff too?
Mostly it's the offline events that he and I work together. We've done a couple online events together now. We just did some of the DreamHack Open qualifiers together, which was really fun because we don't usually get to do online stuff together. I have a few other casters that I do more of the online stuff with. When I cover the Korea teams, for example, on my stream for PUBG, I bring a guy in. His name's Porosaurus. He's another American. But like Matchroom, the other guy I was talking about earlier, the one I'm usually paired with, he has a family and like a life in America. And so like he can't like because of the time zone difference, when I'm usually casting in Korea, it's like 7 p.m., 6 p.m., and that's like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 2 a.m. in America, right? So for him, it's really difficult for him to just sync up with me when I'm doing stuff. Fortunately, there's other guys all over the place who are always willing to jump on and help. And Poro's been really great. I love working with him. He's a fantastic. He's done a lot of the big PUBG global events as well, and he's awesome. And so, yeah, I usually do the just the offline with that guy.
Okay. Do you was that something? Is it normal for PUBG to just be like you two guys are casting this entire event?
Typically, that was the way we were doing it. We PUBG wanted to mix it up a little bit, so we called it the PUBG Nations Cup. It was like a World Cup for PUBG where we had countries for teams instead of teams.
Hmm.
Like Team Liquid, FaZe Clan. Instead, we just had countries like Team Korea, Team Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So at that event, they started mixing up our pairs a bit, but then they kind of went back to just being like, nah, we're just going to stick with, Paperthin and Matchroom, and then Sims and Pansy, and then, whoever else. We're going to try to keep them together as a duo. I think that just kind of ends up working a little bit better. And I know Zombie in StarCraft, like, it's a little different. You guys get mixed around quite a bit.
All the time. There is literally no pairings outside of Tasteless.
How do you, what do you, I want to get your opinion on this. What do you think about that? Like, would you prefer to just have someone that you're paired with, or would you rather, do you like kind of the different feel of working with different people?
Ah, it's the guest that brings it up this time. I've asked a lot of my podcast guests about this. Yeah, so it's it's something that I would like to try to do just a tournament, 3 day or week long or however, with just a co-caster to see how much better it feels. Because we all get along. We all can play to each other's strengths. If we pair two of our analysts together, I would say almost never are they both just going to be analysts. Like they can add in the play-by-play and stuff like that. But I would love to try it just to see if we could grow over the days. I think it also can help with branding a lot to be able to say it's always us versus it's always me. It already happens almost unintentionally from the community that they'll pair the casters together like
Mm.
Zombie Nard and Fake
They gotta
Nard and
squish
Zombie
your names
Pig.
together.
Yeah, exactly, of course. So you can see how it could be a really strong like branding move as well. But it could also maybe mean like more like late night study sessions where you both are talking to each other. And I think it'd be really cool, but I would also really miss casting with anyone else. Like if they told me I was casting with Pig, I'd be like, yay, but also, okay, I'm not casting with Maynard or Roddy. And that makes me sad. So we're like, I think everyone I've talked to is really just like 50-50 on it. So I like to hear all the arguments for and against it.
Yeah, I'd say if you put a gun to my head, I would prefer to just work with one person. But
Mm,
that being said, I you made a great point where you said it's fun, and it's cool to like get to experience working with these other professionals. Like you said, like whether it be Roddy or Maynard or Pig or whoever you get paired with, like that's it. And for me, it's the same. It's really fun to like. I got to work with a caster from Australia named Xenox. He and I got to do some games together, and it was really, really fun because we're both like really hype and really excited. And it was a cool, unique experience, and I'm glad I got to do it. But at the end of the day, like usually I'm just kind of like, there's like something comfortable about
mhm.
just working with the same person over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also gives you an opportunity to like the first cast with the first time that you cast with someone for that tournament should always be a little bit wonky. Sometimes it's really natural, but
Hmm.
it just makes sense. The more you do it, the more you're going to be comfortable with each other and the more you're going to be in sync. It's almost something you can't really argue against. So, it feels like it could elevate casting for individuals, but yeah, I think it's really just the fun. Like the more I talk about it, the more it seems like on a technical level, it is the best thing to do. But then on a fun level, it's not. I want to be able to
Right?
do everything with everyone. So
Exactly. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I totally agree.
yeah, but I'm sure other people might have arguments that like it actually makes you grow as a caster to be able to adapt to everyone, and I could definitely
Mm.
see that. If StarCraft 2 really was all pairings all the time, and I went into the WCS circuit 3 years ago, and they were like, "You're only going to be paired with this guy," I would have maybe never, really bothered learning how to host. Be the guy that throws, and I would never learn how to play by play. So I could see arguments for that too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not an easy answer. There's no there. It's a gray area, right? There's no black and white, black and white in it. I'm right there with you. I love working with some of the other casters I've gotten to work with. But at the end of the day, it's just like so comfortable now. Whenever I'm at an event and like it's me and Matt, and then like we can just hang out and like talk afterwards, look at each other all googly eyed, like oh, like we're gonna casting, right? Like
Oh my
but
god.
like, it helps that he's like a really cool guy and we get along really well too. So like there's that, that's a big part of it. Like actually behind the scenes, getting along with your other casters makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you make it a point to like, I don't honestly don't know what it's like for StarCraft. We all hang out. Maybe one person wants to get an early night or go to the gym or something, but we all hang out. But we watch like the CS:GO casters in their green room, and they literally have like schedules where there's like a morning team and like a night team or whatever. So it's very different. So for you guys, do you always make it a point to go and hang out at the bar afterwards, or is it more about your pairings, or do you have a lot more people who just go up to their room and call their wife and do normal human things?
I would say we have more of that. We have more of casters who go do normal human things. I'm the one who's like out at the bar afterwards, like talking to the players and like trying to find whoever's out. I mean, even though Matt and I get along extremely well, like most of the nights he's just, I'm tired, I'm going to bed, or I'm gonna hang out in my room, I gotta call my kids, gotta call my family. Totally fine. I do not begrudge people at all. Like if that's what they want to do, I don't give a shit. I'm down. I'm down at the hotel lobby, just talking to people, just seeing what's up. If I feel like it. Some days I just go back and go to my room and watch TV and pass out. But yeah, I'm more of the type to sit down in the rooms and like talk to people. I really like to talk to players and get their opinions on what happened that day, kind of figure out what they were thinking, how they're feeling about things. So I like the players that sit around and talk with me a lot. But some of the other casters do it, but me and another guy named Avenger we probably are the two who will sit down in the lobby and just talk to people the most. But Toffees does it as well. Another guy that we work with. He's always down there talking to people
Mhm.
because he really likes the personal side of things. And I'm kind of that way too. So we're all over the place. Everybody's all over the board with PUBG.
Do you guys have a disconnect between your casters and your players? Do you guys just not really communicate very much? It's more like casters have their job and players have theirs?
No, I'd say in PUBG we have a really good relationship with our players. Like we talk to them a lot. Like we're really interested in each other. Like we're interested in each other's even just personal lives, being friends. Like what's really interesting about PUBG is it attracts kind of like a middle ground of personalities. Like we don't have like these players in esports who are just robots. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they are just they're that's what makes them great. They're methodical, they're mechanical, and that's also their personality, which is fine. They're often like some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. But on the other side of it, you got like the really kind of out there, they're always out and about. They're always socializing. They're talking to people all the time. They're very energetic, and they got all these other things. PUBG, I find, kind of has a lot of players that are kind of in a middle ground of all of that.
Hmm.
So it makes it really easy to like talk with them and kind of get a personal relationship going. And generally speaking, there's a lot of really, really nice guys. I could think of literally right now, there's like 40 players that just pop into my head where I'm like, that's a good dude. And I would hang out with him like and have a beer with him any day.
Well, I mean, I guess at the very base level, you guys just have more players when you go to an
That's true
event in
too.
StarCraft. That's our benefit is of being 1v1. The idea is what could you give me an average of the age of your players?
Early 20s, probably 21, 22 would be my guess. We have some players who get close to their 30s. Not many, but most of
Hmm.
our players are, like skipping university to be professional esports athletes, or just out of university and just picked it up.
Hmm.
That's typically the age, but you have a few older dudes out there who are getting it done in PUBG. I mean, PUBG is it's a thinking game for a shooter. It's not a fast twitch as much. It helps, of course, to be able to react to things quickly, but you can be good at PUBG just as understanding the game, understanding where you should be, when you should be doing things. Like timing is so important. So I would say it's kind of fun like that because there's a couple players who are definitely a little older, a little more mature, that you can hang out and talk with just because of the nature of it.
Yeah, when he started talking about your players, I actually thought you were gonna go and say like we don't have the dude bros meatheads of like Halo or Gears of War.
It's not as bad. We have a few, but not really. Actually, mostly we don't.
Hmm.
Mostly we don't. It's
Yeah.
like just good dudes, good smart dudes generally.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's Gears of War's guys who are immature but also nice. The friendly douchebag, I'm sure.
Sure.
I've had a
I
few
was a
friends like
Halo
that.
player. Like I like I've met these people. I was at these events. These MLGs back in the day. ZombieGrub. There is some fun people there. Let me tell you that it was fun.
Oh boy. But yeah, like certain games do attract a certain mindset, and it's the ones that like kind of are the outlier that almost always the most interesting ones. Like the Stefano for StarCraft is like totally out of what you would think a StarCraft player would be, back in his good old days. And then I think for CS:GO, I feel like if there was like a really skinny nerd, that would actually be the guy. I was like, wait, is he good? Because I just CS:GO, and I just think of these guys like as weightlifters, like they all
They're burly dudes.
yeah, they get on a
Ooh.
team, and then even like the skinniest nerd is like, they're like, come to the gym with us, bro. And he's like, okay. And he gets jacked a year later, and you're like, okay,
All right.
CS:GO players.
We PUBG just has so many players. It's all over the board. I mean, we have dudes who are jacked. We have dudes who are skinny, tall, short, everything in between. It's really quite fascinating because like I can't pinpoint what a professional PUBG player is. It's just all over the map, which kind of makes sense again because there's just so many people.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like StarCraft a little bit younger actually amongst the North American European scene, and then it feels like a lot of us kind of see them as like I don't know. If anyone's listening, they're going to be offended. But like, I think there's so many players that we looked at as like babbies, and then slowly grow out of their shell, and we're all like proud mamas, being like, oh, "He's having a drink."
There is that moment when you have one of those younger players and then they kind of grow into things and you're able to like, I've already got my eyes on some PUBG pros where I'm like, soon you'll be able to drink with me. Like you're going to hang out with me. We're going to have a beer and we're going to talk. Like you kind of, it is kind of fun. Like we're like the parents, you know, like I'm about to turn 35. I turned 35 this weekend. And it's fun for me to watch like all these kids, and I call them kids, they're not, they're adults, but like to see them so engrossed in this thing that I took a chance on when I was younger as being like a passion of mine, and that now it's becoming what it is. It's just incredible.
Yeah. But it's, coming to a point, like it just is really important, I think, that we do have some, in my opinion, I think we should always have some interaction with the players. I don't know of any Overwatch or wow, I went straight to Overwatch. I don't know of any esports that maybe there'd be more of a disconnect because I haven't talked to enough people, but I do always like appreciate when I hear about casters who not just hanging out at the bar afterwards, but actually go down like the player pit, for instance, and talk to the guys and try and get like a more personal story out of them. Do you have a
Mm.
lot of that's happening in PUBG where you have because there's the story of the game, but do you guys push the story of the players a lot?
As much as we can.
Hmm.
There's only so much room we have, so it's hard with this many players. But yeah, there's definitely, I think for me, I'm curious about players' mindsets coming in and out of a tournament. I'm not going to name names. I can remember a player at a big tournament whose girlfriend broke up with him, like in the middle of the tournament, like at one of the
Oh,
most crucial moments, and their team kind of fell apart. And it was partially because he was tilted and he was not playing like his normal self. He was missing shots he normally wouldn't miss. He was shooting at stuff he shouldn't be shooting at. He wasn't his normal self, and that caused a big issue. And do we talk about that at broadcast? No, but that's something that I'm thinking about in the back of my mind while I'm watching this, and I'm trying to bring it to the broadcast in a way that's positive and respectful to the player, because their personal life is their personal life. I'm very big on this, where if they're comfortable, like I'll ask them, I'll be like, is it okay if I talk about that on air? Would that be okay? And if they say no, I won't. I will just, no, that's fine, dude. I don't want to, you guys deserve your privacy just as much as anybody else. But
hmm.
at the same time, at least having the information as a caster, whether you use it or not, does kind of inform where you're going to go with what you talk about.
Yeah, I think yeah, bringing in like actual personal stuff is really difficult to do. We had some signature series videos or players a while ago because we want more player focus in our esport, but while they didn't like go into like someone's grandma died and it made them a better person or something weird like that, it was like a like the filter was like dark and it was all serious and how they've been training for 16 years to finally get to this stage. And it's like, all right, that is a story. But more so when you ask the players like, hey, what do you feel about this matchup? Like, hey, is there anything you were doing on ladder that you can tell me? Those are things that I think are really cool to bring up. You're not going to get just by reading their stats on
Mm.
Wikipedia or something like that. So it was more like, do you focus on the team aspect? Like Team Phase has had this many losses and this many thingamajiggers, and they've gotten second place in this many tournaments. Or is it more about do you bring in the players as well?
I try to focus more on the players
Mm,
and their kind of mindsets and their ideas and how they're talking about things. Um, for example, when I was at the PUBG Global Championship, I talked a lot with a team called the Rumblers, who were an American team full of just goofy, cool dudes, just super nice, super funny guys. They were one of those teams that just sat in the lobby all night and would just sit there and talk to you. And so I got really close with them because of that. And they shouldn't have been at the tournament. They got in on a technicality. And I can't, because like one team couldn't make it for a visa reason from, I think it was Vietnam. And so they had to pick the next like best team from the region that the game was being played in, which was North America, because it was like basically last minute. And so they brought in these guys who came in and they performed really well. But what I noticed was when they were positive about how they were going to play, like I talked to them like the night before they would play, and if they were positive about it, they would do very well. And if they were negative about it, they wouldn't. And it was like, I just kept telling them, like, guys, just be irrationally positive all the time. Like, you guys play out of your minds when you're just in a good mood and smart, and you're not down on yourselves. Like, and then like, just because you think you're going to do bad the next day for whatever reason, and then you do, I'm like, just stop, just stop that. Like, you're doing better this way. So it's kind of interesting to get their personality and their mindsets actually do make a big difference to how they play.
Yeah. From an outside perspective, I would have thought that it was a lot more about the teams, actually. So it's cool to hear that it's still a lot about the individual players. Last question. I'm actually going to bring it back way to the beginning of this podcast.
Sure.
You brought up that you did a demo reel. They asked you to do a demo reel just to prove that you could do the work here.
Yeah.
Do you think that it is, I don't want to say requirement, but do you think it's a really good thing for every broadcaster out there to have a demo reel, even if they're in a particularly small, I guess, esport?
I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to clarify it with unfortunately, because I feel like your body of work should speak for itself, and the people who are going to be looking at you to potentially hire you should already know who you are and what you're doing and all this other stuff. Like, they should have been watching the events anyway and seen what you're capable of. That being said, that isn't the case. So you should have a demo reel, because unfortunately there are lazy people out there who don't do their homework, and they want like a one-click answer to their problem, and you can give them that one-click answer, and that will get you work. And I'm actually putting together a highlight reel from my 2019 cast right now, just because I know it could potentially get me jobs.
Yeah. The original demo reel, has it been used for anything else besides that first job?
I deleted it. It's gone. That I hope is nowhere ever again. Maybe somebody in Africa has it. I don't know, but I hope that never sees the light of day, because it is me talking to myself about PUBG for like 2 hours, and it is bad. So
oh, okay. I was gonna say, it doesn't sound like a demo reel anymore.
It's gone.
Like
it's gone. Get out.
Well, that would make sense. It was also your first, so
yeah.
I always thought about, I see some of the big dogs of behind the scenes management and stuff in esports say that you should, who's it, Joe Miller has a, he always says like, you should have your pinned tweet is like all your socials, ways to reach you, and your demo reel if you have one. And
That's
I did the
exactly
first
what
part.
I was thinking of when I was just talking.
There you go. Yeah, I did the first part, but I don't have a demo reel. And I've always thought like maybe I should, because I guess it feels like something that, especially if you're already ingrained in your smaller esport and you're just, I'm just StarCraft. Like, is there even really a point? Like, would a mostly, if not entirely, StarCraft 2 demo reel really be useful to show someone outside of StarCraft 2? Because that's my conundrum.
I feel you totally, and I kind of had similar ideas, but I guess it's better to have it than not, is the best way I could put it. I totally agree with you. I so agree with you. I'm like, it shouldn't be necessary. Like, I do mostly PUBG. Like, you could tell how good I am at being a broadcaster. Like, even if you're looking at me for another game, right? Like something different. Like, I've done some PUBG Mobile. I've done some other stuff. It's there. You can go watch it. It's there. But it is not a bad idea to put it together and have it just kind of there for people, just in case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the best thing you can say, is that it's like there's no reason not to. I mean, unless it's sucky, unless you highlight all your bad moments.
Time consuming is what it is.
Yeah, or expensive. God, I would much rather pay someone to not only build the demo reel, because I can edit and all that, but I would like to pay someone just to find, like, hey, can you go find the ports that you thought I was really good? Like, I don't want to go back and watch myself. But it's probably too difficult to pay someone.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways.
I'm paying someone to do the video editing. Yeah. But I have to find the clips. That's the
Yeah, I try to keep in mind now. Like, I did an interview that I thought went really well. That's Katowice, but who knows if I'll ever actually.
There you go.
Actually make it. But anyways, thank you for answering all my questions. This was a very enlightening podcast.
Oh no, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back. atmosphere in Korea is just so conducive for stuff like this. Yeah. Wish I had talked more to Tasteless about it too. I've talked to him about like the business side of things, but not necessarily about like casting craft.
You should. He'll talk to you about it. Definitely. He would. He definitely would. I mean, he's this is literally he and I will have entire nights where that's all we talk about. And we'll just
Yeah.
sit there and talk and talk and talk. You
Mhm.
know. So it's not often, but it does happen from time to time where we get really engrossed in this kind of thing. But yeah, the business side of course is important, but the technical side is I find to be quite fun and interesting as well.
It is. Yeah. And you also made me miss Korea a lot. So
Oh,
darn it.
well, when all this is done, you'll be back out here. I guarantee it. We'll have you back out here, and we'll get some
Yeah.
soju and
Save up that money, right? I'm not going out
yes.
to restaurants. That's the bright side of things. So yeah,
Mm,
just thank you so much again. And where can people find you? And what online stuff are you doing?
sure. You can find me on Twitter at Paperthin here. Twitch is twitch.tv/Paperthin here. Mostly, I use my Twitch pretty much primarily for casting, but sometimes I'll jump on there and play some games if I'm bored. You could find me on the PUBG Esports News Show, which is on the PUBG Esports YouTube channel. Just type in PUBG Esports in YouTube, should be the first thing that comes up. If you're curious about any of this stuff, you can find my events all over the YouTube Esports channel as well. And most of the events are on there. So yeah, and I think that's about it. I have an Instagram that I never use, so don't even bother.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And I think next week's podcast will actually be with Lemon Kiwi from Overwatch. So look forward to that. Bye, guys.